Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first edition of Carry On, a podcast covering issues relevant to veterans and those who care about them. Carry On is brought to you by Nation's Finest. At Nation's Finest, our mission is to support America's military veterans and their families with a comprehensive approach to housing, health, and employment that helps them achieve self-sufficiency and reach their full potential. With more than 30 locations in 14 communities in California, Arizona, and Nevada, each year we provide critical services and support to more than 3,500 veterans and their families. I'm your host, Mark Miller, Army veteran and Communications Director for Nation's Finest. For our first episode, we thought it would be appropriate to explain more about who we are as an organization and the services that we provide. With that in mind, our guest today is a long-serving member of our board of directors. Burt McChesney is a policy consultant and advocate. He served as special assistant to the Speaker of the California Assembly, chief consultant to the chair of the Assembly Democratic Caucus, and chief consultant to the Assembly Veterans Affairs Committee, among many other roles. Burt also led the campaign for Proposition 41, a $600 million housing bond for homeless and at-risk veterans. Burt is a veteran himself, having served in the United States Army in Vietnam and Europe as a helicopter gunner, crew chief, and NCOIC of flight operations. Burt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here.
Well, we're really glad to have you. And so I want to start it off by kind of going into your background a little bit. One thing all veterans have in common is the memory, be that good or bad, that we have of our own time in the military. Could you reflect for us a little bit on your time in the Army?
It was, like for most veterans, kind of a mixed bag. Vietnam was very much a challenge and resonates still every day for me and for every other veteran, I think, who served in combat. That experience never goes away. But you also have some great memories of soldiers you served with and other experiences you had, the overcoming of some tremendous challenges and satisfaction of having done the job you were trained to do and doing it well. And the training you received and the experiences you received that serve you well the rest of your life. So it's, I look back on it quite fondly. I'm also the son of veteran, World War II, Korea, and my father also served during the Vietnam era, and grandfathers who served during World War I. So it's a long veteran tradition in my family. And I'm proud to be a veteran of the United States Armed Forces.
Well, thank you so much for your service and that of your family members as well. With that veteran tradition, with your family and yourself, with that as part of your identity now, what is it that motivated you to help your fellow veterans through your actions, both legislatively and joining the board of directors for Nation's Finest?
Yeah, I think it's quite simple for me, and I think it's the origin of Nation's Finest back in its early days is a follow through of the commitment we made as soldiers to leave none of our comrades behind. And for me and for the other founders and original team at what was then Flower the Dragon, became Vietnam Veterans of California, then Veterans Resource Center, and now Nation's Finest. As we've grown, we recognize that for many veterans, though they came home, they still have been left behind as they deal with the issues they inherited from the war, with PTSD and substance abuse and the challenges of trying to reconnect in a civilian world after a severe combat experience. And so too many of our comrades were left behind, and Nation's Finest is a continuation of the commitment to help bring those veterans back fully into civilian lives.
It's really a privilege to be a part of this organization, bringing those veterans back and helping guide them home to where they need to be. So admirable cause and reasoning there. So again, thank you for your service, not only in the military, but continuing now. So with all the years that you've been with Nation's Finest, if we go back, as you just alluded to, the different names that the organization has had, and some of the different missions Nation's Finest has taken on, what would you say that through your whole time with the organization has remained constant and unchanged?
I think it's, again, a focus on the needs of veterans who are struggling, whether it's with mental health support services, with substance abuse services, with assistance finding housing, but we've always remained focused on what are the needs of those veterans that are homeless, unemployed, or at risk of the situation. So it's been in some ways a narrow focus on veterans and their families who are struggling, and how can we help them find their way home and succeed in life again.
And that makes sense that that core mission there hasn't changed. As Nation's Finest has grown and morphed a little bit over the years, could you talk about the growth of the organization and what changes you've seen since you've been on the board?
Well, it's just been an incredible ride. Back in the early days when Peter Cameron and a handful of vets and their partners started recognizing that they weren't getting the kind of supportive services they needed from the VA or other social service agencies, and they began to help one another in Petaluma in a rented house where they'd have group meetings and talk about the challenges they were facing individually and collectively, and helping each other get over the Vietnam experience and move on. And to today, where, as you described, we're in 3 states, and we're doing a tremendous range of services. We grew from that small core of volunteers to a top-notch professional staff. We branched out from doing sort of group meetings, AA style, to providing more sophisticated and professional mental health services, employment, training, and placement services, assistance with securing housing, which is critical if you're homeless. That's the first step, is to get off the street and under a roof. So we start out with both emergency shelters and then transitional housing, where we provided intensive treatment, a comprehensive array of services in a transitional facility, and then transition people out to where they could succeed in permanent housing, whether that was assisted housing or market rate rental housing or ownership housing. And then with the passage of Prop 41, which we were the leader in developing that bond issue, and then trying to convince the public to vote for it, which we got 65% of support from the voters, and for $600 million bond program, where we could then, we and others, could build housing, not just facilitate veterans trying to find housing elsewhere, but we could build appropriate, affordable housing of all kinds, from transitional, permanent supportive housing, and ownership housing to provide low-income veterans the opportunity to own their own home. And so we're doing that and providing throughout that continuum of housing, a continuum of supportive services to assure that the veteran and their family succeed.
Well, thank you so much for that synopsis and that roll up there. I really hope for all the folks watching and listening that that helps give them a better idea of the services we provide as an organization and really who we are at Nation's Finest. So as we move toward the closing here, is there anything else that you'd like to say to your fellow veterans or potential donors, or maybe veterans out there or their family members who might need help?
Yes, I mean, first off, I want to sort of applaud Pat Nation's Finest on the backs. We have been one of the premier veteran service organizations in the country for decades. When Peter Cameron and the core original group started helping veterans in the Petaluma and Santa Rosa area 5 decades ago, it didn't go unnoticed. During the Carter administration, Peter was invited to Washington and assigned a task to go around the country with a team and stand up organizations like Nation's Finest all over this country to serve veterans in every corner of the nation. And that history of and foundation of leadership and professionalism and the highest quality service has continued. We were one of the first organizations tapped to do the Agent Orange Assistance Program when after the lawsuit that finally got the VA, forced the VA to provide services for victims of Agent Orange. We were tasked to help go out throughout California and educate veterans and their families about that opportunity because of our reputation for quality services. Most recently, when the VA has continually recognized Nation's Finest for the high quality of services and innovation and support for veterans and their families that we provide. So there's sadly, we'd hoped at one point that we could sort of work ourselves out of a job. There were literally a third of the homeless in California nationwide were veterans back in the post-Vietnam era. Happily, that the percentage of veterans who are homeless as a total percentage has declined, but there's still thousands and thousands and thousands of veterans on the street. We'd hope that at some point that would end, but it hasn't, and we're still here trying to help those vets who are on the street or who are at risk of homelessness, who are struggling with mental health issues, behavioral health services, lack of marketable skills, to help them get back, to leave no veteran behind on the street, as we would not want to leave any veteran behind on the battlefield. They're still struggling and fighting the war on the street, and we need to be there and will be there to help any veteran in need.
Well, that is certainly an admirable cause. I'm proud now to be a part of it, and certainly salute all of you who have set up everything that we've done up to this point through your vision and leadership. So thank you for that, Burt, and also thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your insights and explanations of who Nation's Finest is and what we do. And again, I hope that everyone today was able to learn a little bit more about who we are as an organization through your wisdom today. So thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
Have a great day, Burt.
You too.
So that wraps up our first episode here. Thank you to all of us who watched or listened to our first podcast. We'll be back weekly discussing issues relevant to veterans and those who care about them. So if you have an idea for a topic or you'd like to be a guest on this program, just email your ideas to info@nationsfinest.com. Again, that's info, I-N-F-O, at nationsfinest.com. And of course, once again, if you or a veteran you know is in need or you'd like to make a donation, you can visit nationsfinest.org or you can call 1-833-468-9676. Again, that's nationsfinest.org or call 833-468-9676. Again, thanks for joining us today. Be kind, be well, and as always, carry on.